Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Superman! Wait, no. I was wearing my novelty turn everything into Superman glasses. It's actually a blimp! Believe it or not, you are statistically extremely lucky to see a blimp these days. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a blimp in my life. But I am from Ireland, and well, there's just not enough blimps in the world for every country to enjoy. But even if you live in, let's say, America, for example, and you have seen a blimp before, you may have noticed they're not as common as they once were. Actually, I'd say it's probably more likely that you didn't notice, and are only considering it now that I've brought it up. Well, it is true. Blimps used to be more prevalent than they are now. They're quite rare now, in fact. Would you be able to guess how many blimps there are in the entire world? I'll give you a minute. I understand this is probably not something you've ever spent any time thinking about before. Well, there are only about 25 blimps in the entire world. Just think about how rare that makes blimps. Think of all the crazy things that are somehow more common. All the rare diseases, all the endangered species, all the ancient artifacts. Hell, Jesus Christ appears in toast more often than a blimp appears in the sky. So why is this? Well, first ask yourself why you find this so interesting despite the fact you didn't even notice it in the first place and never spent any time thinking about it. The only answer I can give you to that question is maybe you have a brain like mine, in which case you should probably get back to whatever you're supposed to be doing instead of learning about why there's only 25 blimps in the world. But I do have the answers to that question, so let's get into it. Firstly, a blimp is an airship. An airship, or dirigible, is a type of lighter-than-air aircraft, meaning its lift is controlled by a lifting gas that is less dense than the surrounding air. They are also able to move under their own power through the use of engines, which separates them from hot air balloons, which rely on the wind for navigation. The first steam-powered airship took to the skies in 1852. There are different kinds of airships. In a rigid airship, the envelope is supported by an internal framework. This is known as a Zeppelin. The most famous example, other than Led Zeppelin, which does not meet any of the requirements of an airship, is probably the Hindenburg, which, is already kind of a bad sign for the airship. We're not very far into the video, and we've already reached a major negative. When the most famous example of a mode of transport was actually a massive disaster, we start to understand that maybe there were good reasons these things didn't stick around. A lot of people tend to think of the Hindenburg as a sort of Titanic, but it made 62 flights before it crashed. It was actually a successful transatlantic airliner. Then in 1937 it burned up and killed 36 people. But the Titanic sank on its very first voyage and killed over 1,000 people. I mean, that's way worse, right? And ocean liners are still popular. So what happened to the airship? Well, you may have heard of this thing called an aeroplane. The first one was invented in 1903. As technology progressed, the airplane became faster, bigger, more reliable. Airships became largely obsolete, and high-profile disasters like the Hindenburg just served to accelerate their declining popularity. Eventually, airships were only really favourable in situations where hovering in one spot for an extended period of time was more important than speed and manoeuvrability. This brings us to the blimp. The blimp is a non-rigid airship, meaning, unlike a Zeppelin, it is not supported by an internal framework and instead maintains its shape thanks to the pressure of the gas inside. They're used for a variety of purposes, but in modern times they're most known for advertising and capturing aerial footage of events, thanks to their ability to stay in one spot for extended periods. Once again, technology did catch up to the blimp with the advent of the helicopter, which can also hover in one spot. But the helicopter is constantly guzzling fuel. If the engines stop, it falls out of the sky. A blimp also needs fuel to power its engines, but the engines aren't what keep blimps in the sky. It's the gas inside them. They're basically big buoyant balloons, so fuel is not quite as pressing a concern as it is for the helicopter. A blimp could theoretically stay in the air for days. But there's only an estimated 25 of them left in the world, and only about half of those are still in use. Out of over 400,000 commercial pilots in the USA, only about 120 have a rating to fly an airship, so if you ever meet a blimp pilot, appreciate the rarity and perhaps the historical significance of what they do. Although probabilistically you will almost certainly never meet one, so I don't know why I bothered conjuring that scenario in our heads. So why are they so rare? Well, as I mentioned, technology sort of passed them by. Even in the last few years, they've been made more obsolete. Remember I said they're sometimes used to capture aerial footage? Well, we've got drones for that now. They're a lot cheaper. How much does a blimp cost? About $1 million, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe dozens if you're building a new state-of-the-art one. Then you've got to find one of those elusive pilots, or alternatively you could fly it yourself after the required 400 hours of training. Compare that to the 40 hours it takes to qualify for a private pilot's license. Then you've got to fill it with the gas. Airships like the Hindenburg were filled with hydrogen, but it turns out that stuff is pretty flammable, so we moved on to helium instead. Unfortunately, helium is non-renewable. We have a finite supply. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's also quite rare. In a more intelligent species, this would probably mean the safeguarding of the element for important purposes. But we're humans, so it's party time. Fill up the balloons, who cares if we run out? A blimp holds hundreds of thousands of cubic feet's worth of helium. That's expensive, and with our helium reserves being depleted, it's only going to get more expensive as time goes on. Taking a blimp into the air could cost you $100,000 for a single trip. So all they're really good for anymore is advertising, which I'd wager is what most people recognise them for, and it costs an insane amount of money. I mean, yeah, everyone is going to look up at a blimp, but everyone would look at an aircraft carrier too. It doesn't mean it's a good idea to buy one for advertising. Just put your money into digital marketing and you'll probably go much further with much less cash. So blimps and more generally airships are just no longer cost efficient. Technology made airships largely obsolete, but it could also bring them back. If we could figure out the prohibitive cost issues, maybe bring hydrogen back into the equation. Okay, well, if we can figure out something, it's been suggested that airships would be great for large-scale cargo transport, because they can travel massive distances and deliver cargo to places with lacking infrastructure. They could be useful in space programs too. They could potentially get us to orbit cheaper than a rocket. There are companies looking into these possibilities, so we may see the airship reclaim its former glory. At present, the future of airships is in great darkness. A darkness that stretches on forever, but there is a small glimmer of light, a light that simultaneously promises to extinguish and be swallowed by the darkness, or reignite and illuminate the way forward. Similarly, as this video draws to a close, you stand at the threshold of a doorway. Beyond its gaping mouth sits the darkness and the glimmer. As the video ends and you pass through the door, you realise the darkness is the absence of Cuxer, the eternal plunge into blackness and the slamming of the door forever. The light is the presence of Cuxer, which you can embrace by subscribing, ensuring your future will be graced by the touch of more of my videos. Now the video is complete and the light dims. Will you reignite it? Will you subscribe? I leave you now to the darkness, but I will return once more to bring the light. I hope to see you there.
Terrible, this is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's so 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the